today, if anyone's interested in the audience. We have Julianne, who is the founder and CEO of Creative Nature Superfoods, that produces allergy-friendly snacks and baking mixes sold in leading supermarkets and exported to meet the burgeoning international demand. The company was named FSB's Best Small Business in 2018. June is voted Guardian Leader of the Year in 2016, winner of the NatWest Every Woman Award, and despite potentially discouraging comments from Asian investors on her fundraising journey, smashed its 350,000 crowdfunding target on Seedrs by raising 500k in September. And finally, Ross. Ross is the founder of talent and culture business Hidden, co-founder of creative industries job sharing platform Parents, and co-founder and senior talent consultancy Unknown. As an inclusion and diversity advocate, Ross helps to bring bias-free talent acquisition systems and drive inclusion for creative businesses from the inside. He's motivated by the need for social and cultural change and was previously co-founder and CEO of Gemini People, part of the Hamilton Bradshaw portfolio of recruitment businesses. So he's going to be sharing his experiences with us. So got there. Welcome. I've just got to turn this on. So here. Hello. Oh, hello. Right. How are we? We good? Thank you very much for coming and sharing your experiences today. The main focus of this panel is to hear your founder and entrepreneurial journeys, and then also some of your experiences around investment. And now, as entrepreneurs, we all hope to have that kind of perfect linear growth, and especially for this crowd, more money in, more money out, everyone's happy, everyone's healthy, and it's all a great ride. But as we know, that's not always the case, and there are typically some points and journey ups and downs as we go along. So, Michelle, I sort of referenced it in the opening remark, but could you share us a bit more about your story and all of those ups and downs that you went through?
We definitely haven't got time for all the ups and downs.
A couple of minutes.
Before we start, can I just say, because I think some of the things that we're going to talk about today, around diversity, but also mental health and well-being, I'd just like to say I am a mental health first aider. So if anyone is affected by anything that we talk about today, please feel like you can come and talk to me afterwards.
As am I, but I might be as well, so we can look out for each other.
We can look out for each other, but I think it's always important to say it's brilliant when we're talking about mental health and well-being, but we need to look after the people that we're talking to about it as well. I spent 15 years building Liberty, which is a purpose-led business led by young people, and could you take the power of marketing to create solutions that delivered for our clients brand benefit and business benefit, but that also and always delivers some kind of social benefit and impact to young people, which as a model was a lot of emotion and a lot of ups and downs, proving that you could place equal importance on purpose and profit. And in 2016, the year that was 2016, if you can bear to cast your mind back to the beginnings
of referendums. Nothing happened that year. Nothing happened.
And for me, it was one of those years. So we had decided to lead the business through a round of social investment, which is pretty much the same as normal investment, as far as I still understand. Maybe a little bit more patient. I don't think it is more patient, really. That's what I found. But I was going to lead the business through a round of investment so that we could scale up the business and scale up our impact in the world. That was the thing that was motivating us. But for me, 2016 was just one of those years like any one of us would have. I was leading the business through that round. We had referendums. We were a project-based business, so there was a lot of uncertainty about midway through getting to that point where we were trying to close the deal. But I had a lot of physical issues that were undiagnosed that were beginning to impact something. I had developed a permanent headache, which I fondly called investment headache, just putting it down to the slightly longer hours that I was working on top of the already long hours that I was working already. My daughter had gone to secondary school, and there was nothing wrong with that. She loved it. She joined every single extracurricular activity, so there was a little bit more plate spinning. And there were just lots of just stuff that happened that year. And I always said to myself, when we close the deal in August, I'm going to sort this headache out. And I think I had developed tinnitus by that stage as well. I'm going to start looking after myself. And we closed the deal. And I said to myself, like any great business leader, I love a bit of a business theory. Oh, the first 100 days of this new relationship are really, really important. So I'll just get the first 100 days done, and then I'm going to sort out what this headache is and start looking after myself a little bit more. On day 105, at the beginning of December, I sat at the bottom of my stairs, and I burnt out physically and mentally. It felt very sudden at the time, but now I can look back and see that actually there were many signs. And I just felt like I couldn't go on. Physically, I was very, very ill by that stage. And that is what got me to my doctor, to my GP, and having to make a really tough decision for me as someone that is really, I would class myself as resilient, resourceful, determined, and I didn't want to give up at that moment, not for the physical reasons nor the mental ones, but I needed to take some time out of the business to get better. And it was always interesting to me that it was more easy for myself and my board to talk about my heavy periods, my impending hysterectomy and loss of fertility and the fibroid that I finally got diagnosed. It was much easier for us to talk about those things than it was my mental health, which I had flagged my concerns for, which had created a little bit of a tumbleweed moment. And when we could talk about the physical things that were happening for me, actually, we all breathed a sigh of relief, and I was complicit in that as well. And as I stepped out of the business, and this was the second thing that I kind of look back on, I guess it was quite pivotal in terms of why I now sit here in front of you in a pair of pyjamas, which I'm still never quite used to, even though I've done it quite a few times now. And that was as I stepped out of the business. Someone said to me, you know, Misha, it's a bit awkward when you talk to the business about your mental health. And so I stopped talking about my mental health. And that was crushing, and it was silencing. And no one ever really knew why I had stepped out of my business. And that did not sit well with me. Fast track, it's a much longer story, but all the way on the other side, what I have discovered is that actually when you start talking about your mental health, when I'm going to tell you about my mental health, or I'm going to ask you how yours is today, it's not really that awkward. It's awkward for about 3 to 7 seconds. And that's in my head because I don't know how it's going to land or how you're going to respond. And if you can push through that awkward, then actually we can build more deep and meaningful relationships. I spent a lot of time in my pyjamas in that time of illness, both mental and physical. And I guess I got to the crossroads of where brilliance meets madness, and I thought, you know, could the pyjamas be the Trojan horse for delivering messages of hope and help around the topic of mental health? And by creating a new purpose-led business, could we make mental health an everyday conversation? Because that is good for business.
Great, and I think that's a sign of a true entrepreneur, that even sat in your pyjamas, you're still thinking of new ideas of, could I make this into a business? And here we are today. So thank you very much for sharing your story.
It's what brought me back to life in many ways, even from those very dark moments. So I'm not sure if that completely answers the question of the ups and downs.
Yeah.
But you know, 2016, 2017, that was a big lot of ups and downs in my life.
Well, we're going to come on. Thank you very much for sharing that. And we're going to come on, I think, from more to the topic of today, which is how can investors and as you said, your board. And very interesting, I actually hosted a panel of our members the other day, and one of the founders says, I now say to my team, you know, when you think you want to lead by example, I now say I'm having a mental health day. So actually having, you know, I'm feeling a bit run down physically, you can actually say it mentally. And he says it's really awkward to start with, but then people are really buying into it. So I think there is definitely something there. Ross, I'm going to come to you now, because you've had something sort of, again, a particular moment in your life and a sort of incident, as it were. It's quite sudden, that impacted your journey. And please, if you can, as much as you can, I'm happy to share that this afternoon.
Yeah, sure. The first time I've spoken about this publicly, so bear with me. But I think just more generally on the conversation of mental health, it just, as a founder, it wasn't something that was on my radar at the time in 2012. Now I understand we are all on a continuum, but if I look back, I think I was way above that. I was very positive. I'd secured funding. I had my first startup. Times were good. I was living a life of privilege at the time, which I think around the broader inclusion conversation is actually very important, because I think you need to recognise that privilege as the first step before you can actually take action. And my story kind of starts with that privilege, really, because being on that journey, I was just under a year into founding the business, and we were growing quite quickly. I think we'd reached 20 heads at the time. And I was actually heli-skiing in Canada, which was incredible. I went with my best friends, 6 of us went out, we'd stay for quite a long time. Heli-skiing's not cheap. For there's some VC and P in the audience, you must know what I'm talking about. And we were in a hot tub. Yes, I'm on a panel with women talking about sitting in a hot tub. And I looked up at these fir trees, and some snow came down quite heavily through the fir trees, and there was a bit of a cloud of dust. And I kind of looked at it, and it was snowing heavily, and thought, oh, that's interesting. Should I say something? No, I don't think I will. The next day, we went up in the helicopter for the first time. And unfortunately, at 10:04 that morning, I was on the mountain, and my guide stopped in front of me, and the whole mountain gave way. And it was 1.5 miles wide and 1.8 meters deep, the avalanche that came cascading down in front of me and took down everything in its path, of which there were 200-year-old fir trees. We were right in the middle of nowhere, only accessible by helicopter. And the worst thing was that when you heli-ski, you ski in groups of 4, one are at the bottom, one's in the air, and one's on the mountain. And we were the group on the mountain, and you know, to this day, obviously, I'm extremely grateful that I wasn't, I was above the crack and the seizure line, but a group of my friends weren't, and they were at the bottom. And I had to watch as this snow came down, these clouds, and watch them try and run for safety, which unfortunately they weren't able to. And it engulfed them. And the next point, we had to ski down over the debris. And unfortunately, the rescue operation wasn't completely successful. And my best friend Ryan passed away, as did the girlfriend of one of the guys on the trip as well. And the kind of follow-up to that was obviously very intense. There was a police investigation. I came back in a very, very dark place. You know, some of that kind of being in a natural disaster zone was akin to kind of, I suppose, something you might see in the movies. And I came back into work with post-traumatic stress disorder. And that proved really difficult for me. I took a bit of time out, but why that's really relevant today is that relationship with my investor became very toxic, because that kind of resilience that you're expected to have as an entrepreneur was broken down completely. I had nightmares, I had triggers coming at me left, right and centre. We were doing sales competitions that were themed as an avalanche. I was with my daughter watching My Little Pony, and the ponies were in an avalanche, and I would break down. I'd be at client events, and songs, music, touches, anything would trigger this kind of reaction. And I was sat there in a board meeting talking through my numbers, which surprisingly weren't going in the right direction, and I was being pushed, and I was being pushed. And I felt horrendous. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I was drinking a lot, it was going a little bit off the rails. Thankfully I had a business partner to stay quite close to me at that time, but the relationship with the investor became very difficult. Thankfully, Peter Andre came to my rescue, and on Twitter he was talking about a charity called Talking to Minds, which was for troops for PTSD. And I had a 3-day residential cognitive behavioural therapy course, which brought me back into the room. I still have nightmares. I've had to face that fear because I went back a year later and I skied the same mountain with the same pilot at the same time. And for me, that really completed the journey and enabled me to move on from this kind of very extreme situation. But it still affects my decision making now as a founder and a leader of 50 that we have at the moment, because I made that decision in that hot tub and seeing that avalanche not to speak up. And when you're now responsible for the well-being of your employees, it questions your decision making and whether you should have the right to be able to think about their lives as well. So now Guy came to me, and I've worked with Ali as well for a while, about taking this conversation to the investor community, and not just the importance of understanding the really difficult challenges around anxiety and depression, but it can be a life event that can come at you from nowhere, that can change your whole look on life and your mental state. So that's why I'm here, and that's my story.
Thank you very much for sharing, and well done. Oh, hello. Yes, thank you very much for sharing, and I'll come back to you about, we'll talk more in a bit about what investors in that situation, what could have helped you in case you as an investor may face that same situation, but we'll take a moment. Melinda, we spoke, I haven't purposely done this in order, but we'll come to you, Melinda. We spoke just before actually around this idea of mental toughness, and you're having to, and Ross alluded to it as well, this resilience and mental toughness and stuff like this. And from a mum raising kids, we talked about it. Could you share a bit more about your story and how you've scaled your business and the sort of journey that you've been on and that idea of mental toughness that you face every day?
Sure. So being a sports psychologist, we are taught when I did my master's about resilience, mental toughness, you know, how to perform at your absolute best. And it's constantly pushing from this kind of zero functional human being to the plus whatever, mega performance and outstanding elite, whatever you want to call it. But the interesting thing is, being an entrepreneur, that is literally what I have to do every single day. You've got to dig deep, you've got to be able to find the resources, the resilience somewhere inside of you and keep going. And I think, you know, I've had lots of experiences. This is my third business. My first business I kind of founded and sold a couple of years later when I was 25 years old. So I had an exit. Take note, I didn't even know what an exit was. But it also taught me, growing up in a family of entrepreneurs, that it was not always easy and there was ups and downs always. And my dad is still an entrepreneur and he runs a record business. My late mom was an entrepreneur, she had a florist. So this was a topic that I grew up with, and resilience and digging deep and hustling and finding a way was just the way that it was done. I think also growing up in South Africa, when I did, under apartheid, things were not equal for lots of people in the country, but there was also an amazing spirit of entrepreneurial energy, and people were mavericks who just did things because you could. And all of those lessons have helped me to overcome starting a business, you know, bringing up 2 kids. I got divorced, had to bring up 2 kids on my own in a foreign country. Sold that business, then started another business, and you know, the lessons keep coming, and I haven't learned them all, and it's just a matter of understanding that your mental toughness is like mental fitness, and I talk about this all the time. In order to get fit, I mean, who goes to the gym here? Yeah. So what happens when you go to the gym? You stress your body, and you break down your muscle fibers. And then what happens after a couple of days rest? Those muscle fibers get stronger and your body gets stronger and you get fitter. And it's exactly the same with your mental health. And we've all got mental health, as Ross said, we're all on a continuum somewhere. But I always talk about mental fitness. And this is not something you do once a year and put it in the cupboard. This is something you need to be aware of every single day and doing it every single day. And whether that's mindfulness, meditation, checking in with yourself, journaling, it doesn't matter what it is, but that literally has got me through so many tough times. And I know I will have to draw down on that again. This journey's not over. But constantly thinking about, have I done my mental fitness this week? I think is really, really important.
Great, thank you. John, I'm going to come to you and sort of change the question a bit, because I know you've had some particular ups and downs around and some potentially demoralising moments around when you've gone to raise investment. And potentially, could you tell us a bit more about your experiences when you went out to angels before you went crowdfunding?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had ups and downs with investment as a whole, and it put me off completely going to investors. So, for example, when I first started, it was only me, and then I brought in my partner to help me run the business. The company, just bear in mind, was in £56,000 losses. I took it from that within 18 months back into profit. Then went out to investors and said we were going to launch in the supermarket. They then said to me, you're only a little girl and you'll never ever launch into a supermarket. They laughed at my financial forecasts, and that was sort of the breaking moment for me when I didn't really know what I was doing. I got to the point where the reason why I built my brand was to have a purpose and was to help people like me, and then get told by investors, actually, no, hasn't got legs and it won't work. I think that was the hardest bit for me.
So what did you do then at that moment? You sort of either left that meeting or a series of meetings and going, what do I do now? How did you bounce back, and then what did that decision making, you went on to do some crowdfunding, how did you then take the next steps as an entrepreneur and find a solution to move forward?
For me, it was about resilience, and I decided not to go down the investor route. Completely pulled out and decided to bootstrap it all. Launched into the supermarkets, factored, literally found whatever money I could find through my own personal savings, and launched the brand properly. From then, those same couple of investors that gave me those comments came back and asked to buy the business. I said no at that point, for obvious reasons. But then I knew I would be at a stage where I would need to fund the business to get to the level I wanted to. So I decided to go, okay, now I really need to think about what type of investor I want to work with. Do I want angels? Do I want crowdfunding? And I think that's important. You need to find the right type of investor, because it's a two-way relationship at the end of the day. And I was very lucky enough to be put in touch with a group called Capitalpreneurs, and got introduced to people that way. Decided what type of investor I wanted as a lead. Launched on crowdfunding, but on that day I physically couldn't press the button to go live. I had to get my other half to do it because I was so scared we weren't going to, and to fail publicly is quite demoralising for you as an entrepreneur, but also for your team. So you've got to try and hold it together for your whole team to keep them motivated, and that's one of the things I was most scared of. But